Alright, this will be my premiere. My first ever what if. This what if is what if Deku had antimatter. Yes, that, antimatter. You're going to ask how would he get antimatter? There are multiple ways, but for this we're going to change up some of the story. Instead of just having a fire breath for Sashi's family, Sashi no longer has fire breath. He actually has the ability to float. It's not that he's changing gravity or he's using a mix between condensed air and lightning himself. He uses what is known as antimatter. Now back to Izuku. Izuku is going to be born with more of his father's look than his mother's. We're going to actually start off now that that's covered. I'll get into more detail the later on in the story we are. I'm going to try to make this first one about an hour, but I also want to get some stuff done. So, we're going to start off with Izuku's birth. He is born this time with only one joint in his pinky toe, which will signify he has a quirk. The doctors that are holding him, as soon as he is birthed, the doctor starts to float upwards and then flies against the wall. Everyone in the room is very surprised by this and is wondering what is going on. They just write it off as he is one of the rare cases of kids being born with their quirks, but he doesn't know that it could be activated already. We're going to do a bit of a skip into about when he was 4, when Bakugo figures out his quirk. A few months go by after Bakugo figures out his quirk, they start training it, and this is the scene that you first see in My Hero Academia, the first episode, as there is a kid being bullied by Bakugo, but Izuku gets in his way and says, "Stop it, Kachan! If you don't stop, I'll have to stop you myself!" And he starts to kind of shake because he has not awoken his quirk yet. Of course, he was born with it, but he doesn't know how to use it. A bit of a difference. And up until then, him and Bakugo were great friends. He doesn't actually know why Bakugo just started being mean to everyone out of nowhere. So he doesn't really want to hurt his friend, but he'll do what he has to be a hero. He's always had that dream. And Bakugo will then do the same as in canon and say, "Trying to be a hero, Deku? Someone without a quirk can't be a hero." And he rushes forward with a explosion punch to Deku, as Deku flies backwards a few feet and stops, as he is not touching the ground. He is floating about a foot or two into the air, back down, so he's staring at the sun. His eyes are growing a bright red, as his black hair starts to go out in every direction. He starts to lean upwards like Dracula out of his coffin. He looks at Bakugo as he says, "Stop it, Kachan!" And he holds out a hand as this rush of energy flows through him, out of his palm, like a spear towards Bakugo, as it hits Bakugo in the chest and flings him backwards, as it's almost like he's falling backwards, not just being pushed backwards, as if the gravity itself has changed. And this is where I'll explain the first part of his quirk, antimatter. He uses antimatter, which, if you guys don't know, antimatter is known as the opposite of matter. Funny, eh? Antimatter is not affected by gravity. Well, in a way it is. When antimatter is put into a gravitational sort of pull, it will go up, left, right, or it will go vertical or horizontal. Sorry, my brain went kind of dumb there. It goes any way it wants. But Deku's quirk allows him to change which way matter goes, as he affects Bakugo, turning the matter that surrounds him into antimatter, so he'll fly backwards. So this way, it's not like Deku is actually floating, he's just not falling. And Bakugo, he wasn't shoved backwards by some immense force. The gravity changed, so he was just falling down a cliff, basically. As Bakugo hits the slide and the gravity goes back to normal, as Izuku is extremely exhausted, he lands on the ground, barely being able to wobble stand, as he turns around to the kid and asks, Are you okay? Bakugo's goons at the moment are trying to help him up, while the bullied kid nods out of just astonishment. He thanks Deku as he has to run away because he's scared of what Bakugo will do next. And Bakugo, then after standing up, looks at Deku and says, Maybe you're not so useless after all. And Bakugo and his goons walk away. We're going to take a small skip, just a day or two, where we're going to see Izuku and his mother in the quirk doctor's office. And just for happenstance, if you guys haven't read the manga, this will be a spoiler, so skip about, let's say, 10 to 30 seconds. This is not the same doctor that has been selling quirks to All For One. That is why, because this quirk is so insanely powerful, he would literally rip it out of the kid right there and then. Anyway. The quirk doctor, one of the many, walks out of a room with a notepad and a pen as he's scratching something onto the piece of paper that is clipped onto the clipboard or notepad. And he looks down at Izuku with one eyebrow raised, as he then looks towards Inko and says, Young Izuku here has a very interesting power. We called it antimatter. He emits this antimatter at such an alarming rate he can use it like a weapon. He affects the matter around him and changes it. Really, if we were going to if we were going to put a limit on his quirk, we weren't able to. Every test we gave him, he succeeded and passed with flying colors. He has the potential to be a very great hero, maybe even rival All Might. If you want to train him young, his quirk could be very dangerous since he affects other people as well. If you want him trained young, the quirk doctor pulls a little card out of his pocket as he hands it to Inko. Call this number. I can introduce you to someone. Inko nods her head as Izuku and her leave, Izuku basically bouncing from foot to foot as he is super excited to hear this. Inko feels very happy and excited that her son's dream might come true. We're gonna make another time skip. He is 5 now, and he is not really good with his quirk, but he's learned a bit about it. He can do the same thing his mom does. He can levitate small objects by just changing the gravity around them. But he hasn't learned much, as Inko notices that his learning kind of stopped from their self-teaching, so she calls up a person. And when she calls the line, the quirk doctor answers and says, have you finally decided? Inko responds, yeah, I think we have. So, where should we go, or who are we meeting? The quirk doctor says, an old friend of mine. He used to help me give some of those tests. As he gives them an address, and they drive a little bit, let's say like 2 miles, about 20 to 30 minutes, through traffic and all that, as they get to an abandoned warehouse. And they enter the warehouse to see a racerhead, Aizawa, talking to the quirk doctor. Yes, I know everyone's going to be like, why don't you make All Might his teacher and all that? Because honestly, this quirk is strong enough on its own, and if I give him if I give him one for all, he will honestly break time and space. So let's just not do that. Don't worry, one for all will be in the story. It will just not be with Deku. As Aizawa looks towards the young Izuku and says, "So, this is the one. Are you sure he's powerful enough for me to give him personal lessons? I'm very busy, you know." As the quirk doctor assures him that it is worth his time, Aizawa starts off with saying, "Alright, kid, show me your quirk." Izuku floats about, let's say, 3 feet in the air because he's not quite comfortable with his quirk yet, but he knows a bit about it. As Aizawa notices that he has some control over his quirk, he nods his head. "Alright, I'll do it. I need his mother and you to leave the premises for a while." They do, as Aizawa will do some training with Deku. This training goes on from just normal training, such as like him using his quirk to lift weights, normal body exercises, up until he turns about 9, and then Aizawa asks his mother if it would be okay to spar with Izuku. He wouldn't be going all out and all that, but he wanted to test Izuku's reflexes and all that through fights. She gave him the thumbs up as they would start sparring from the age of 9 to about, let's say, 13. And from what I'm getting in the show, we start off with Izuku in high school, and UA's a college. But then also there's the times where they call it UA High, as in UA High School. So I don't fully know. So I'm personally gonna say that UA is a mix between, where you can enter it as a high school student and then continue going there as a college student. It's just that it makes sense to me. I don't fully understand Japanese schooling and all that, so I, yet again, can't have that much of an impression on it. Alright, we're going to then pick up in the class where the students are all waiting for the teacher. Oh god, give me a second to calm down. Okay. Not calm down, but you understand. As Izuku doesn't show off his power much, but the very few times he has, maybe to stop debris from falling on someone, he was, the very few people that have seen it think of him as quite the powerhouse. But the reason that I'm not explaining to you guys his whole quirk yet is because I want it to be a bit of a surprise. I think I said that already. Whatever. The teacher walks in as he walks to the front of the class holding a stack of papers. As he looks through the papers and then he looks up as he says, "Well, today we have Today we're going to decide your future plan. What are you going to do for high school? Where are you going to go?" And he was like, "So I should be handing you all these papers, but screw it, I know you all want to go to the hero course." As everyone starts cheering as they use their quirks, Bakugo interrupts them all as he says, "Hey, Teach, don't let me in with these losers. They all would be lucky to get sidekicked to busted D-lister." As everyone in the class immediately starts yelling at Bakugo. Well, everyone except for Izuku. And this, what if, Izuku has spent a lot of time, with Aizawa. So he has a lot of experience with Aizawa, and he started picking up some personal traits from Aizawa. As he stays quiet, just kind of thinking and writing stuff in his notebook. There will be a personality change in this, but not drastically. He will still be a fan of All Might and all that. He'll still be very polite. He's just more quiet. And when he's not, like, geeking out about a superhero, he'll be thinking all the time. As everyone's yelling at Bakugo, the teacher interrupts them and says, "Ah, Bakugo, aren't you going for UA?" And everyone just kind of shuts up for a second as they start chattering. Makes sense, you know. Top dog wants to go to the best school, you hear someone say in the audience. The teacher says, "Oh, Izuku, you also want to go to UA." Everyone shuts up as they all stare at Izuku with a little bit of a raised eyebrow. As, remember, not all of them actually know he has a quirk. Well, everyone knows he has a quirk, they just don't know if it's strong or not. So none of them laugh or anything, but they just think, he's probably gonna fail. But the very few that have seen his quirk are like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. As Bakugo stands up angrily and walks over to Izuku's desk and says, "But I will say this, through the years of Izuku training with Aizawa, he has fought with Bakugo a few times. So Bakugo thinks of him as a rival and not someone to be stepped over or stepped on. But they have gained some sort of friendship, I'll say. It's not like buddy-buddy, but it's not as bad as it was in canon. He walks over to Izuku and says, "Better not fail, Deku. I want a chance to rematch you in UA." And everyone in the class at once, just their jaws hit the floor, as this is the first time he's actually acknowledged Izuku. Izuku just looks up with, like, not disdain in his eyes, but a little bit of frustration that he would think he would fail, and say, quiet. No, that's not his voice. Give me a hot second. What do you mean, fail? Every time we fought, I've at least put you on your ass, if not one. So, Bakugo seems a little bit affronted that he would say this openly, but everyone else in the class doesn't believe it. And Bakugo goes down and sits in his seat frustratedly, as we're going to make another time skip to the end of the day, where Izuku is sitting in his at his desk writing notes again. And sorry, I didn't speak about the whole beginning of the day where he wrote notes on the hero fight. I honestly don't really like that fight between the heroes and the giant villain. I think that the whole Mount Lady stunt wasn't impressive to me, so I don't usually include it in my what ifs. Like, it happened. He has notes on it, and that's what he's writing at the moment. But he just, I don't think it's that impressive. So it's not worth noting. To me, at least. And, Bakugo sees his notes and goes to reach for his notebook to see what the fuck he's writing, because Bakugo still thinks that he's better than Izuku, but he won't step over him, like call him an extra and stuff like that. But he wants to know what he's writing, because it might give him an edge in the next fight. But Izuku, just with a twitch of his right index finger, has his notebook fly to the ceiling, as he says, "Oh no, Kachan, what do you want?" The notebook flies back into Izuku's hand. Nothing, nerd." And with that, Bakugo walks out of the room with his goons behind him. In this world, I'm gonna have it so Bakugo isn't such a raging ass. Sorry. Anyway, a few minutes go by as Izuku finishes up his notes and he heads home. He sees a message from his mother on his cell phone that he needs to go shopping. So he takes a shortcut to the closest store. As he's walking under the bridge, the crate behind him starts to rattle, or the manhole starts to rattle, as a humongous sludge villain jumps on him and starts to try to take over his body. Izuku waits a second because he has to think of what to do, And then he resorts to doing this. As All Might hops through the manhole a few seconds later, he sees Izuku and the sludge monster explode. Well, Izuku stays on one tack, but the sludge monster explodes everywhere. As Izuku just wipes off his shoulders and his chest as he gets some of the sludge off. Alright, now you guys are gonna wonder what he did. So, he changed his, the air around him and the gravity around him so it was going every direction. Basically, it was opposite force from where his body is. So while the slime was wrapping around him, it was being pushed away harder and harder and harder over time. Like there was some sort of protective bubble around him. And he just expanded that bubble so it popped and blew the sludge villain everywhere. That's his, so far, that's his best defensive move called antimatter bubble. Izuku's going to notice All Might and goes, "Oh my god, it's All Might! Can you sign my notebook?" As he hands All Might his perfect notebook that doesn't have a single burn mark on it, because Bakugo isn't such a raging ass. Sorry, I had to say that. Anyway, the surprised All Might does, as he is writing, he asks, "What is your name?" Izuku responds, I'm Izuku Midoriya." All Might says, "Well, young Midoriya, that was a very impressive display you just did." Izuku says, "I might have gone a little overboard." And All Might snickers at that as he says, "Do you... wait, no, it's not yet. Sorry, guys, I just brain fucked." All Might hands back Izuku his notebook as he says, "Well, I better be bottling up this villain." Izuku shakes his head as he moves his finger like he's instructing a band, so that... I forgot what it was called, but you just start to see as all the globs from everywhere start to condense themselves as they are now just a ball, as Izuku is making all of them float. He's changing the gravity of each and every one of them, connecting them into one ball. And yes, he does have antimatter, but he does also have a little bit of Inko's quirk, so he has a small amount of telekinesis, so even if he couldn't do it with even if he couldn't do it with his antimatter, he could have done it with telekinesis, but we're just gonna say he changed the gravity of all of them to make them hit the center. As All Might just retrieved his bottles from his bag and noticed that the sludge is just one ball, and he goes, "Another impressive display," as he just starts swinging the bottles through the circle or sphere of sludge, and eventually gets the sludge villain captured. But since he has so much time, Izuku is going to say, "All Might, I have a question for you. I have a very dangerous quirk, as you have seen. It could harm many people, but I want to save people. I've always wanted to be a hero, even since I was a kid. Do you think that I could be a hero?" he says, getting this weight off his chest. And All Might turns around with a big smile as he says, "Young Midoriya, what you just did shows me that you have great potential to be a hero. But you're going to have to work hard. Get some good control of that quirk of yours." Izuku starts to shed tears as his idol just told him that, he could be a hero. And he instantly, as All Might jumps away, he doesn't chase him this time. He instantly calls up Inko and starts to, while he's walking towards the stores, starts to tell her about what just happened and everything. She congratulates him about meeting his idol and all that. Then he immediately hangs up that phone and calls Aizawa and tells him that the number one hero just told him he could be a hero, and it's all thanks to Aizawa's training. Aizawa, on the other side of the phone, lets out a small grin as, over time, they have bonded a bit, and Izuku sees Aizawa as kind of a father figure, if you could imagine that, but more of like a friend, an older brother. And Aizawa saw him as like a younger brother-ish. Um, while they're having their talk about more training regiments that could be done, Izuku sees and hears a ginormous explosion coming from about a block away as he says, I gotta go, Aiza. I need to see what that was. And he runs. As in this world, of course, Izuku wasn't the reason that the bottles fell out, but while All Might was flying in the air, he was thinking a lot because he just saw a very powerful quirk. He was wondering what that quirk could do, as the bottles would have slipped from his pants and fallen anyway. Uh, Izuku, wanting to get there fast to take some notes, makes him fall upwards and then fall towards the direction of the explosion. So what I'm going to give you a brief explanation now of what it looks like. Have you seen any Spider-Man movies or anything where they jump off a building backwards and do that kind of arc-like thing? Well, he does that, but upwards as he's flying up. He does one hand sign, which is just him. Imagine the finger gun hand sign, and then he pulls the trigger as he launches towards the new destination, the explosion. As he lands at the back of the crowd, not to be recorded by the few news reporters that are there already, so they wouldn't see him using his quirk. He lands, does a bit of a roll, and then starts walking towards the explosion site to see what's going on. He would then see that Bakugo is trapped in the sludge villain, and no one's helping him. The few heroes that are there can't get to him because all the fire. Izuku, not seeing Bakugo as a friend necessarily, does know that he can save him and he has to. As Izuku is walking, he uses a bit of telekinesis to grab some of the water that the water hero is using. Was he there? No, but there has to be some sort of water source nearby, as he uses telekinesis to grab drops and then use those drops and put out some of the smaller fires. But then he uses his antimatter as like a blanket, as he holds his hands up in the air like he was about to slam down on the ground. He does that as he drags his hand down. All the fires within, like, let's say 30 feet of him just go out, as he then changes his gravity so he's falling towards the sludge villain. He points his finger at Bakugo as he sends out, let's say, a spear of antimatter, and it strikes Bakugo in the chest as he changes his gravity as well, pulling him towards Izuku. And he also heightens the gravity so it pulls him closer. As Izuku grabs the front of Bakugo's shirt near his collar, he then throws Bakugo to the group of people as he lets go of Bakugo's antimatter, as he spears, coating his entire right arm with the same sort of antimatter bubble I was talking to you guys about earlier, so it's wherever the sludge touches it, it repels it in the opposite direction from where it touched it. As he shoves his hand into the middle of the sludge villain, it explodes again. Izuku is going to fall onto the ground, blinking a lot as his head hurts and his hands are aching. His heart is beating faster as he was scared while doing that, but he had to do it. He moved without thinking. He starts to breathe out and breathe in, slowly regathering his breath, because Izuku's weakness, I haven't said this yet. Wherever he uses this antimatter has a chance of breaking, because it's changing the gravity rapidly out of nowhere. He could pull his own skin off if he did it too fast. But at the same time, using his telekinesis, even a small amount of it can give him a headache. Izuku sighs as he stands up, and he looks towards the heroes as he says, why wouldn't you do anything there? Why was me a middle school student, the only one that acted? And every news reporter immediately turns their cameras to him as he starts a speech about how he didn't want to have to save anyone today. He wanted to worry about shopping. He wanted to worry about things middle school students should, but because the heroes weren't acting, weren't trying to do anything, he had to, and that could have killed him. As the heroes look ashamed and a few angry, the news reporters start, like, immediately crowding around Izuku and Bakugo, which Bakugo is just kind of on the ground gasping for air. Izuku answers a few of their questions, and one of them asks, Who are you?" Izuku looks at the camera and says, "Pretty soon, you'll know me as antimatter. And with that, I have to go shopping," as he points his finger gun into the air and fires as he flies into the air, but falls into the air and falls towards the supermarkets as he lands a few alleyways away, gasping for air again because he used it again. He might have had a brave face in front of the news reporters to look cool, but that took some energy. Izuku is then going to just sit down next to one of the walls, or lean against one of the walls, as he's just going to take a few minutes to breathe. Sorry I'm saying he's just going to so many times in a row. That was a little bit of a brain fart. All Might then walks around one of the corners and says, "Young Midoriya, that was very impressive. You have a very strong quirk, more than I thought. And I want to ask you a question." Izuku, gasping for air, says, "What?" And All Might looks back at Izuku and says, "Would you like to become my successor?" Izuku immediately holds up his hand and shakes his head no. "I already promised another hero I would become his successor. I am sorry, All Might. You'll have to find another." As Izuku does idolize All Might for how many people he saved, he looks up to Aizawa in a different way. Sorry, I'm pulling up some notes. Alright, I have my notes. All Might looks just very shocked and surprised. "Young Midoriya, are you sure?" Midoriya then stands up, gasping a bit, and says, "Yes, I am sure. I would not like to betray my sensei. That would be horrible of me. And I do want to be a hero. Heroes don't lie to someone. Heroes don't betray a promise." All Might then, thinking, "Man, he's a perfect match for my power," will say, "Alright, young Midoriya. Continue on with your life." And he's going to hop away, but while he's flying, he's going to notice Izuku is next to him, and he says, "Young Midoriya, you can fly? You just saw me fly." Or, no, he wouldn't know he's there. Yeah, little thing. Could I recommend someone to be your successor?" He nods his head. As someone that isn't in canon, I'm going to introduce you guys to now. Izuku brings him to a house not too far away from his own. As he walks into the door, he asks, "Hey, Joe, can you come down here?" And a young woman around his age walks down the stairs. As on her you'll just see, like, imagine a crab's carapace, the shell, but black, as she didn't have time to put on clothes. "I have to ask you something, Joe." All Might's outside. "I need to ask you something, like, immediately. If you want to throw on some clothes, or you can just wear your carapace out. It doesn't matter to me, but there's someone out there I need to introduce you to." Joe nods her head as she's just going upstairs to put on some clothes, like a skirt. leggings and a t-shirt. She walks downstairs as she exits the house and sees All Might, which she is also a fan of All Might, and since All Might didn't have to extend himself super hard in the fight with the sludge monster, he does have a few minutes to an hour left of his heroism mode. Is this the kid you talked to me about, young Midoriya? He nods his head as he says, Joe, I want you to talk to All Might and call me after. All Might, she does need it more than I do. As Joe has basically a hardening quirk, but it's only the strength of a crab's. So he flies towards his house as All Might's just like, he does know that's illegal, right? Whatever. They do their spiel as Joe does accept. And here's a new character I created. Alright, we're going to resume with Izuku the next day, walking with Joe to a beach as she asked him to accompany her. Why do you think he chose you and then allowed me? Izuku then looks towards Joe and says, well, me, probably because I did that thing that everyone says heroes do. And you, because I personally recommended you to him. You have the same fighting spirit as I do, so I imagined it would be a good fit. She nods her head as she's just going to thank Izuku for that. And no, this is not the ship that I'm making. It's just another character that I think that could wrap into the story nicely. You guys let me know your opinion on the character and what if it was the ship. And maybe it might be. Who knows? As Joe is just going to bump into Izuku as she narrowly dodges a hero sprinting by. Heroes say that everyone should be on the lookout and careful around these days, but they don't even look out. As Izuku nods his head and chuckles. Yeah, good thing that you are faster now, right? He says awkwardly. They just chuckle to each other as they tell jokes, as they are childhood friends. She was one of the kids that he saved from Bakugo's bullying, and ever since, they have been really close friends. They eventually do get to the beach, where All Might is waiting. He says, young Midoriya, didn't expect you to be here. Give me a second. And then he addresses Joe. Young Josette. Damn it, how did I? Young Josette Yuko. Thank you for coming. I already gave you all for one, but I wanted to share some information with you and train you so that you can handle it. All for one, you can give other people traces of it, share it with others. It's difficult, and I don't think you'll be able to for a while. But it is also not very, let's say, recommended, as it will make you personally weaker, but it will give you allies, ones that you can trust. Josette nods her head, or Josey. Alright. Now the training. Since young Izuku is here, I'll have you spar with him and clean this beach off, as it is the same beach from Canon where Izuku had to clean off. But first, I have to quickly go do something. You two spar, clean, one of the two, and I'll be back shortly. As he jumps away, and that's where we're going to end this session. I hope you guys did enjoy. Sorry I don't have much time. I will make another part 2 if we get, like, let's say 20 views. And I honestly probably will if we even don't. But I hope you guys enjoy the series. Leave a like on the video if you liked it, dislike if you didn't. If you have any other what if ideas, or if you think of any cool things for this specific what if series, then leave them in the comments and I'll tell you guys what happens next time. Peace out, y'all.